I was in the mood for doing some kind of challenge playthrough recently, specifically something of the Pacifist flavor. So I picked up the game I best know how to break in half, Battle for Bikini Bottom. I call this super pacifist because it goes a little bit further than what people usually mean by a pacifist run. Here are the rules. The first cardinal rule is to not harm any enemies. This includes bosses, so we're going to have to work our way around those. The second cardinal rule is to not break any tikis. This is the super part of the super pacifist run, because I don't think most people would think about tikis when they think pacifist run. Look at them though. They've got faces, they move around, and they react to you doing stuff around them. The third not-so-cardinal rule is to just stay in the spirit of things. Try not to do anything that could be construed as harm to someone, and try to minimize property damage. Now, with all the formalities out of the way, let's get started. We've got plenty of work ahead of us.
I think that this is going to be a very long day.
Though for what it's worth, things do start out quite easy, seeing as how you could barely screw anything up in someone's house if you wanted to. The only place there's anything you can hurt, that is, tikis, is in the library, and there's not exactly much resistance to not breaking them there. Just pick up the sock and you're good to go. With that, we can pick up our first hard-earned spatula of many, freeing us from our house arrest, and unleashing us upon the world. Look out, world.
There's nothing like the sounds of your own neighborhood.
Go away, SpongeBob.
The first thing we'll do is go into Squidward. Maybe not the nicest thing to do, but we do need the spatula. There might be another spatula that can replace this one, but I couldn't pull it off. You'll hear more about that later. We'll also pick up the sock in Patrick's house. We are kind of destroying his couch, but at the same time I think he'd be pretty okay with us helping him find the sock that happens to be in his couch. There is a problem getting on top of the houses, namely that there are some tikis on one of the buttons you need to press to make platforms appear to get up here, but some awkward jumps on Squidward's house can fix that, and we're good to go just as well. Now it's time for things to really go off the rails. We don't want to fight any bosses, but we still need access to the rest of Bikini Bottom. It turns out Jellyfish Fields is the answer to all of this. I'll explain why in a second, but you'll also see that I'm going there in a rather strange way. In particular, if you go just out of bounds and have Hans drag you through the taxi stop, and then you have to do the taxi stop while that's happening, and then you do it a second time after respawning, you'll find that you actually go to Jellyfish Fields like normal. But with a catch. Hans has now been mostly disabled. Namely, we can just drop through the death planes that would usually cause Hans to catch us. That allows us, for instance, to jump into the spatula here and subsequently drown. This puts us in a strange state where, as long as you have saving enabled, the saving game text will stay on screen, and while it's on screen, Hans is 100% disabled. It will go away as soon as you pick up another spatula or quit the game though, and that means you can effectively only do this once per save file. We're going to use this golden opportunity to just run around the perimeter of Bikini Bottom, all the way through Jellyfish Fields, and into the second area through Rock Bottom. Unfortunately, we can't use this to get into the third area. We'll need another trick because it's surrounded by an invisible wall. But for the time being, we can pick up the sock over here, and we're going to have some other business to do in the Mermaid Lair. See, we have a problem with shiny objects. Normally the main source is destroying robots and destroying tikis, both of which are... Now at first, I thought to myself, there is one good ethical source of shiny objects, Skee Ball. But there's a problem with that. We never get the bubble bowl in this playthrough, so But then I remembered, you can hit this thing for 5 shiny objects. And then if you reload and come back to it, look what happens now. Hit again, boom, 5 more, and 5 more, and more. Keep doing it. As many shiny objects as you want, as many as you can dream of. This is a task in case you can't tell. But that means we can pay off all of our debts to Mr. Krabs, and that sets us a good few spatulas ahead already. Don't worry, we'll need even more shiny objects later. Anyways, all it actually takes to get from the second area of Bikini Bottom to the third is some finagling with a sponge ball. It's a little tricky, but you can figure it out after enough practice. In any case, you can pick up some gold underwear on the way here, because why not have max health the whole time? You don't need it, but it's nice to have. From on top of the police station, you can just jump right on the purple rock, slide over, and you're in the third area. Congratulations. We'll also head into the chum bucket for a quick wall jump and another easy spatula. I'll pick up the sock behind the Krusty Krab, but we can't go inside because, well, there's no point since it's just fighting robots in there, and we're not going to do that. To get on top of the Chum Bucket and Krusty Krab, we can do this crazy bounce with the sponge ball. I always love doing this, it just feels cool. Scale the Chum Bucket for a spatula, then really scale the Chum Bucket for style, and pick up your last pair of golden underwear as well.
Wow, 6 pairs of underwear.
Now we can admire and pick up Patrick's sock.
Hey, Patrick, nice sock.
Bless you.
There's another spatula we can pick up later, but otherwise, missing 2 spatulas and 3 socks, not great. Anyways, before we head to Jellyfish Fields again, we're actually going to want to go to downtown first. That's going to give us access to something pretty important. From this point onwards though, I'm really only going to say anything about the parts that are different than a casual playthrough. For instance, when we get over here, we normally press a button to drop a ramp down to cross this section, but there's a Thunder Tiki sitting on that button. Fortunately, that's nothing that some careful platforming can't solve for us. Now, about that important thing that we came to downtown for, there's a trick here called VMS, Vertical Momentum Storage. I'll perform it here with something called Sponge Ball Storage, where you just keep double jumping after picking up a sponge ball. Then you can become a sponge ball whatever you want by landing without jumping again. If you land on a platform that moves up and down when that platform is low, and then untransform when that platform is high after having moved off the platform, you will move upwards in a single frame as much as that platform moved upwards. If you jump at the same time, that means you're jumping with an incredible vertical speed. What's even better is that this momentum is stored across loading screens, so I can load any spatula I want, jump as soon as I load in, and get incredible air. Anywhere in the game, more or less. Here, just as a demonstration, I'm using this to skip Sandy's portion of downtown, but I don't think there's anything keeping you from doing that normally in a Pacifist run either. I will use this for a whole lot of things in the run. In fact, you could probably do lots of things with this that I'm not using it for in this playthrough, merely because, well, it's kind of annoying to set this up, and oftentimes I think it's just more interesting and fun to skip things in other ways, so I'll oftentimes use other methods when I could have used this as well. Anyways, one of our only actual obstacles on the rooftops is this chuck here. You're supposed to defeat this chuck to raise the platform to progress, but with some careful platforming, you can actually use the chuck itself as a platform, and that solves our problems. The other problem is this building where we're supposed to destroy a Duplicatotron to push the button, but that's also easily bypassed by just jumping to another building instead. That's just a sock even. Then we can get back up with a carefully placed jump to grab onto a hook above us. There's not much we can do in the lighthouse since it's just one big battle royale where I have to kill things to progress, but there is a sock we can pick up. Unfortunately though, the spatula in here and also the wheel in here will have to go uncollected, and that's also why I'm not bothering picking up any other wheels anywhere else. The sea needle isn't very fruitful either since we can't destroy any tikis or one of the main spatulas here, and we also can't use the cruise bubble for another spatula. Although at the very least with some fun out of bounds trickery, Sandy can pick up a sock in an admittedly kind of cool looking fashion.
Someone better make good use of all these.
This leaves downtown in a pretty sorry state. We do have all the socks, but only 3 spatulas. We had to skip Tiki's Go Boom for obvious reasons. But speaking of missing things, let's go back and get that one spatula we missed in Bikini Bottom, getting on top of Shady Shoals. VMS is the appropriate way of doing this. Now for Jellyfish Fields. There is one sock we're supposed to bring Patrick back into the first area for, but I don't think we can do that, so I just get it with a damage boost. Otherwise, the first area is pretty straightforward, just to remove some tikis and whatnot. There are some pins you can bubble bowl for a sock, but the sock actually floats way above the pins if you haven't broken them yet, so we can just VMS into it. It's also really hard to avoid robots killing themselves in this area. There's no rule against letting that happen in this playthrough, but I still try to avoid it. And it's not easy. They love running into this goo while chasing after you, even when they're on different levels. Anyways, another issue is this Duplicatotron, which has a button behind it to get into the next area. Like many problems, this can be solved by a good place VMS. Jump behind it, and this is why Patrick can't get back into the first area, because this wall is going to stay up, for good. Unfortunately, VMS can't always save us, like in this next area. Here, there's for no discernible reason an invisible wall above where you spawn. At the end of the slide there's this wall of tikis that all explode as soon as you get close to them. After many hours of trying, I eventually found a very convoluted clip here. There's one small spot where, by using some frame-perfect jumps and bubble dashes, you can get over the invisible wall and get wedged between it and the level geometry, and eventually you can get somewhere that you can clip through at. This is actually the very last thing I figured out for this playthrough. Kinda funny that both this playthrough and my SpongeBob Only one are both made possible by me finding a new clip in a weird spot. Anyways, once you do clip through, we're on the ground where you can just run around freely, all the way to the end of the jellyfish caves, where there's a very convenient spot on the bottom of the slide where you can do a ledge grab to clip back into the world. From here, we can just pick up our cave spatula, and that gives us the teleport to get back to the beginning of the caves. And that means we can approach Patrick's little island from the other side. But I don't mean on foot, because there's a wall in the way if we try to do that. No, we're going skydiving. I love doing VMS with Patrick because it really does feel like you are doing some kind of skydiving. You know, it's just the kind of skydiving where you don't have any kind of parachute.
Hey, SpongeBob.
Woo! Thank goodness you're safe, Patrick.
Well, of course, SpongeBob. Why wouldn't I be?
Well, the robots and the...
Oh yeah, I found this for you. I don't know what it is, but it looks important.
Thanks, Patrick. I tell you what, all that running around has left me pooped. Why don't you continue on for a bit?
Okay.
We'll also do the same thing to pick up a sock at the end of the slide. The next area, finally, is actually pretty straightforward. Sure, there is a spatula we can't get because it involves destroying robots, and there is a sock we can't get here because it requires the cruise bubble, but it's not that big of a loss. What could be an issue is that there's a wall of tikis that's blocking the entrance to a cave. I'm not sure we can jump over it. I've never actually tried because it's easy enough to use a bubble bash to get on top of some tikis and skip past that cave. Once we get up to the king jellyfish at the top of the mountain, we're obviously not actually going to fight them. Instead, we're just going to VMS past them. That way, we can get the slides, sock, and spatula. That leaves us with all but one sock and all but two spatulas in jellyfish fields. Pretty good. Now into Goo Lagoon. This is one of the couple levels that we're actually going to do backwards, just because, well, on one hand it's easy, but on the other hand there are some obstacles to progressing forwards, and if you can get to the end of a level, it often turns out to be easier to go backwards, because you can skip whole areas by picking up the spatula at the end of an area and then warping to that spatula. To get to the end of Goo Lagoon, we're going to do the famous sponge glide. By damage boosting into the lifeguard tower at a precise angle, and then doing a bubble bounce at the right timing, we can glide all the way over to this island, which is normally only accessible via the pier. Afterwards, we can get back to the pier this way. This also gives us access to the entirety of the pier without destroying anything. Look at this. Beautiful undestroyed Ferris wheel. I told you, no property damage. Sadly, we will miss some socks and a spatula here because you can't destroy tikis or robots. But we can at the very least go back into the sea caves and then progress from there. There's actually no need to do this part backwards. There's actually no difficulty at all in getting through here. Some of the jumping around Thunder Tikis is tedious, but that's really all. Once we're done with getting all the socks in here, we can head back out the front of the caves, and that takes us on top of the sandcastle. I don't think we can get into the sandcastle without breaking tikis, so this is important. Likewise, I don't think you can take the intended route to get this sock over here without destroying some tikis either, so we have to damage boost instead. Now all that's left is just to save some kids. That leaves us with all but two spatulas and two socks in Goo Lagoon. Okay. Now we're officially done with the first third of the game, and it's time to set our sights on the Murmur Layer. Things get trickier now because not only can we not kill things, but we're also now missing abilities the game expects us to have. Here, the Bubble Bowl, which the whole Murmur Layer is basically a tech demo for. Thankfully, being able to just jump into pits proves useful for us nevertheless. Likewise, we can be inventive to get through the first area by just jumping right up to the end. On to the second area. Unfortunately, this is where things stop being so easy. On the right side, we don't have to do something as insane as what I did in my SpongeBob Only playthrough. Now that we have VMS, we have a new route. We can just jump up to the left instead of walking up the right side of the wall, and this allows us to jump along the wall quite easily this time, before making a hop onto a pillar to finally close the gap into the main area. And now that we have access to Patrick, he can get us through the rest of this room.
Leave it to us.
We can take the teeter-totter to get up to Barnacle Boy, where we can do the usual things with the Towers of Power. Then after that we can take the slide to pick up a sock, and We can take the slide again, this time with some finagling with the physics, to jump into the trigger area for the prawn chamber. Once we're inside of that, it's as simple as pulling the right trigger, and that'll take us to the prawn fight. Of course, we're not actually going to fight prawns, we're just going to turn right back around. But that brings us back to the top of the main chamber, leaving us a nice spatula and access to the rest of the murmur layer as well. There is really nothing special about the security tunnel, it's actually probably the only place in the murmur layer that doesn't use the bubble bowl in any way. Since I was feeling a little light on cash, I did stiff this clam here, but you can pay it normally too. The rolling ball room on the other hand is actually pretty sad. Without the bubble bowl we can't even make the ball appear, and as tempting as it is to try to clip into this glass cage with the spatula, I don't think it's possible to do that without a cruise boost, which needs the bubble bowl anyways. All you can get here is just a sock. All in all, we missed out on 3 spatulas in the murmur layer. We can't fight prawn, we can't hit the security system switches without the bubble bowl, and likewise for the rolling ballroom. Now to forget the bubble bowl completely in rock bottom. This place actually doesn't use it anywhere as best I can recall, so life's gonna be a little easier for us. We do encounter a little resistance early on, and I don't mean Mrs. Puff.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
I more mean that sleep times are kind of a pain to get around if you're not going to take them out, but on top of that there's this whole first area here that admittedly I entirely forgot how you're supposed to do legitimately. In the end though, it doesn't really matter how much you can or can't do here because Sponge Ball Storage manages to obviate every single obstacle. Without it, you'd have to contend with some issues like this Thunder Tiki right in front of a button we want to press, or this other Thunder Tiki that you can't even avoid activating if you ever come out of this box. That is mean. But there's also another button underneath this Duplicatotron, so you can't actually start the timer to attempt to progress through the rooftops. Whoops. That's why we just use Sponge Ball Storage again to get up to the museum. Who needs Sandy when all you really need is a good roll up against this cliff and good jump. I said a good jump. And now I beg Sandy for forgiveness because we actually need her in the museum. Turning off the security system does break those little drone things up in the air, so I'll actually do everything without disactivating it. Like for instance, using invincibility frames and talking to Barnacle Boy to pick up that sock. Or letting these machines prove their friendship with us by helping us platform to the top of this area. Now, there are walls of lasers to deal with here, but Sandy's tough. As long as she's holding on to a ledge, she can just grit her teeth and bear it. Remember to pick up all the socks and everything in here too. Clip through one more laser wall to reach the exit of the museum, and then immediately throw away all your progress because the spatula is down below where you can't get back up. So that means another trip up here. Then make a third trip because there's a painting down here too. Why do we take a painting from the museum anyways?
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared
Yeah,
to
I know.
handle the answer to.
You are probably supposed to get this painting in a different way, but in any case, you can get through the Trench of Advanced Darkness totally casually. No problems whatsoever. Also, 2400 shiny objects for a sock? Jeez. Sneak your way to the end, do some slide stuff, and you have 100% at rock bottom with no casualties. Amazing. Now go grind more shiny objects, because that sock train is dry. You're gonna need them, because our next destination is the most expensive destination in this game. That is Sand Mountain.
Sand Mountain.
First we go jump in a lake. There's no actual need to do this, I just like doing it. Otherwise this area is normal, but we'll miss a sock because we don't want to destroy the sand now. Getting through slopes at that hard angle is pretty straightforward. You might have to jump under a tiki or two, but the real difficulty is what's at the bottom. Nothing that can't be solved, at least in this case, by a really, really big VMS. Really big. Like before, no destroying sand then, so that's another sock that we lose, but this was always my least favorite sock anyways, I don't care. Now again, we've got robots at the bottom of the slope, but there's a bit of an issue this time. You see, I was trying to do a VMS here. I'd have to do a bigger one than normal. But the weird thing is, at one point, I just couldn't do VMSs anymore here. I just couldn't get air. I'll talk more about that later. It's gonna show up again. For now, Sandy's got a dilemma. She wants to get into this passage over here blocked by these rocks, normally accessed by hitting this button, which drops a sandball on some innocent people. So instead we'll just finish this slope, where thankfully we don't need a VMS because we can just jump right over the fence this time. Then after we finish the time trial, we can just do another big old VMS. This time, not to get to the end, but instead to get to the end of that cave that Sandy's going to get into. This is where I remind you again that this is a task, because this many frames per jumps in a row, well, some people can do it, but admittedly I can't. Getting back up the slide is a real pain. Anyways, once we make our way up to the sock, that's where we'll leave Sand Mountain. We did miss a spatula. I think it's possible to get, but I just couldn't get VMS to work for some reason. So I annoyed Squidward instead. Time for a nap. Immediately there's a spatula that's supposed to require the bubble bowl, but just doesn't. And we can otherwise progress through the level like normal. Same for Squidward's Dream, which is just pure platforming. I opted not to go into Mr. Krabs' dream. We can only get a sock there, and as soon as you enter, it kills a robot. I didn't kill them, but I'd still rather spare them. Sandy's dream is also straightforward. After Larry compliments us on the size of our dream,
Wow, your dream is massive.
you can progress as normal up until you get to Plankton here. See, the issue here is that while we could pay the clam and swing across, we would have to destroy some robots to pick up the spatula on the island on the other side. This is no match, of course, for a VMS, which allows us to just jump into the spatula that's hanging up in the air without defeating any robots. So in the dream, we only missed one sock and one spatula. Looking back, apparently I accidentally picked up that one Mr. Krabs sock. Pretend I didn't do that, you don't need that to complete the game. Let's move on to Kelp Forest. Now Kelp Forest is another backwards level, so we're going to start with a VMS, then jump up to where we would normally re-enter this area from the end, that is, the kelp vines. I'll jump on this platform to make sure that the leaf below spawns so we can get back up here easily. Of course, we can also teleport with the pause menu. Not to mention the box here actually works even if you haven't opened the top one. This slide is yet another thing that you can do normally, but it's kind of a pain, it's long, I didn't feel like doing it, so I decided to take the quick way down instead. Of course, I do still need to go onto the slide proper at one point to pick up a sock. Once we're done with that, we can keep going back into the kelp caves, where there's a spatula just waiting for us, that we normally cannot reach otherwise. Fantastic. That of course opens up the pause menu teleport to the beginning of the caves, so now we're at the other end of the caves. There's not much you can do in here without the cruise bubble, but fortunately we can get around some gates by jumping up to the sock. From here, we can jump around on the wall a little bit, and eventually get out of bounds. This is how we're going to pick up the one camper that we couldn't otherwise get here. Unfortunately though, I haven't been able to use the same strategy to get all the crystals. I can get all but maybe one or two, I don't remember, but I gave up many years ago when I first did the SpongeBob only challenge. Anyhow, you don't have to be in bounds to actually pick up a camper, thankfully, so merely passing by the outside of this alcove of the camper is enough. For some reason I decided to stop going backwards and then do the first area right now. I'm not sure why that was, but here I am. There's a sock you can't get from bubble bowling, these shush tikis. Oh well. This is another area where I can't remember how you're supposed to do it, but it's easy enough to jump places you're not supposed to be to get through here without having to use the cruise bubble for anything. Combine that with a VMS to get to one sock and another camper in high, hard to reach places. Teleporting back to the start of the kelp caves, we can continue going backwards to go to the end of the kelp swamp. Naturally, there's another spatula waiting for us there, and now there's no other obstacle to doing the rest of the things laid out in the swamp for us, that is, getting all the socks, spatulas, and so on. Talk to Puff after you've found all the campers, and you've got yourself all but one sock and one spatula here in the kelp forest. Also not a bad run, especially considering how late in the game this is. Now our second final challenge will be the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, where we're going to start noticing the fact we don't have this cruise bubble. At least at first. Unfortunately, this very first area has two spatulas that we can miss because we can't lower the goo. Once we get through there though, the next area is actually totally trivial because it's mostly platforming focused. In fact, it's almost entirely wall jumps. Kind of a weird thing to do, but it's what I wanted to do. Do take some time to jump into this big green pit though. The robot ship battle is where things get interesting. Naturally, I don't want to do any harm to the robot ship, but we do actually have to arm these cans to get a spatula. At the same time, nobody says we actually have to fire the cans to get a spatula. Merely making them ready to fire is enough. See? Spatula right there. And if we did try to fire them, the robot ship's defense systems are unharmed, so they can defend themselves anyways. After arming the cannons, the springboard appears for another spatula, and we've done everything that we can do here in the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard. Admittedly, not as much as I would like it to be after skipping the goo spatulas and a mini-boss. Now we pick up our sock spatulas, and we're ready for our final challenge, the Chum Bucket. See, I also didn't need that one sock that I picked up by accident. Now there is a complication here. We need to fight a boss. To avoid attacking though, we'll end the fight another way. by jumping into a trigger to end the fight. Sadly, you have to attack the boss to make this possible. That is, unless you have VMS, but I can't get that to work right here. I don't understand why. But we've got the nuclear option for VMS. Look how high this teleports us. If we can pause on the right frame and then VMS, this is what happens. That sponge is gone. For reference, in in-game units, the VMSs I usually do have gotten me to a height of maybe, I think, 3,000 or so units. This one got me up to 15,000 units of height. I could have easily cleared Flounder Hill if the VMS would work there. But like there, I can't get it to work properly here. Thankfully, I still managed to teleport above the trigger and all as well. I know I've seen other people VMS here on the GameCube version. I don't know why I can't. Anyways, that doesn't matter now, because we are inside the robot, and all that's left to do is break some fuses. This could be considered harmful, but it's literally impossible to trigger the ending otherwise, so oh well. 1 damage boost down to the very last platform here, and we can break a fuse to jump up to the brain. Now we conclude with the very first discovery I made that allowed me to complete my SpongeBob only playthrough. Once you've jumped on top of the brain, climbed around a bit, and gotten not to this port, but the one on the other side, all you have to do is run inside and then hit and break a fuse. But there's a problem after that. The exit closes, so how do you reach the other 2 brain tubes? Well, first you can clip in with a ledge grab here. I didn't find that. What I did find was getting from the second brain tube to the third. You see, there's some very awkward geometry right here, and if you stand in it, you can eventually clip through after finagling for a good while. It's not easy, I don't know how to do it reliably, but once you get it, you fall right on top of the third and final brain tube. Then you can come in from the outside, and from there you can break the fuse through the wall, thus ending the Battle for Bikini Bottom Super Pacifist run.
SpongeBob, you did it!
What'd he do?
It's all about what I didn't do, Patrick. By some magic or another, I didn't harm anyone, and I certainly did not break any tikis. Now here comes the end of the video part where I feel like I should have things to say, but I'm not really sure that I do. I guess I don't usually make this kind of long-form edited content. I'm not sure whether I want to do more of it or not, at least on this channel, but we'll see. If people like this, I might do more of it too. Contingent, of course, on me having more ideas, which I'm not sure that I do. But I have always loved the ideas of challenge playthroughs and pacifist runs and so on, so maybe. Either way, I found this fun. I hope you did too. Thanks for playing, the game says. And I say, thanks for watching.